Welcome to today's episode of CIO Water Cooler TV. My name's David Savage. I am your host for today's episode, and I'm joined by Adrian Wakefield today. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, David. Yeah,
having a positive day, getting towards the end of it now.
I'm having an excellent day. I've met a number of people. I've had a bunch of interesting conversations. You never quite know which way they're going to go. So yeah, I've enjoyed myself today.
Have those conversations been about target operating models?
A few of them have. It's been an inevitability when you introduce yourself and people ask you that nutty question, what is it you do? Yes, they have been a bit about target operating models.
Exactly how are you going into organisations then and helping CIOs and tech organisations move forward and understand this area?
That's very interesting, isn't it? So I think it's probably important to understand why operating models are actually important to people, or why people should pay attention to them. But I think the question's a deeper one for me, right? And it's actually technology is absolutely at the heart of whatever organisations want to do these days. And so I think the question is not how are we going to use technology, right? I think it's more fundamental than that, and it comes down to the fact that the question most informed board members or CIOs actually have in their mind, at least one of my beliefs, is how is my technology organisation performing? Because fundamentally that is the vehicle through which you're going to deliver almost anything in this day and age. So for me it was about presenting how do I work with technology and people in a way that I felt was digestible and a way that I felt was meaningful for people. So the first point is getting people to think actually that the organisation is at the heart of this. Quite simply that is, this project didn't mess itself up, and that great piece of code didn't quite write itself yet, although it may do in a few years' time, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I'd be quite interested to know who your customer typically is.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. Yeah, I think it is either a very engaged technology leader who knows that perhaps he needs a bit of help in this space, because there are some specialisms around organisational development and HR practices that I think they may not be as familiar with. So I think you have an engaged technology leader who recognises that, or you have perhaps the rest of the executive board who are slightly disavowed or disaffected with that technology leader, or indeed perhaps they see a technology leader that they're looking to help develop. So I think the customer is generally at a senior level in an organisation, but they will be having that question mark about, I know that technology is at the heart of almost anything I want to do in my organisation. So yeah, I primarily think I'm working with leaders in the organisation, but that could be the IT or technology leaders or other board members.
And if you're talking to the technology leader, what tends to be the main hurdles that they are facing if they are trying to realise the potential of their organisation?
Well, there's a couple of things there I think which are interesting, and often it's actually about having somebody neutral to go out and do their work for them and gather really good feedback, because often the problem that they think they need to fix may not actually be the problem that really does need fixing. So I think one of the things that you can offer through this work is a little bit of an agnostic and neutral approach. Getting really, really good feedback as to what people really think about the technology organisation and how it is performing is a really important part of actually understanding what needs to be done as part of that. Operating model is not just about people, it's about structure, it's about accountabilities, it's about ways of working, it's about capabilities. So there are lots of things that come to play in it, but invariably it comes down to that technology organisation's performance.
I think that's an interesting point though in itself, because if you work within an organisation today, I use tech in my role in any number of different means and ways of using it, but I don't always think of the technology organisation as being the owner of a lot of that tech. So I suppose that the technology estate has bled into so many other departments of a business that must make this much more complicated.
That's a very interesting point, and it's a really good angle. In fact, the ubiquity of technology, and indeed how you need to engage with various different functions, I think is really important, and it's not a one size fits all. So you talked about ownership. I don't think that the technology organisation owns a lot of it. It might own some core infrastructure, perhaps some of the more traditional elements, but actually you will understand that it is a whole. It's a bit of an ecosystem, and actually the interdependencies are what you need to be thinking about.
It must be crucial that the technology leader has a consulting role at the very least in that technology to enable them to realise the operating model.
Absolutely. That's absolutely vital. In fact, the business relationships and the roadmaps that they're developing into each of those functions are vital. And you've talked there about a consulting type role. I think a more modern engagement model for businesses can focus on coaching, consulting, building, operating, or outsourcing. So actually there are a number of different ways in which an organisation might need to engage, depending on the particular mores of its technology strategy, how different functions are using technology. So it's not a one size fits all. And actually the interesting point is that it is not a one size fits all. And one of the real pleasures is going out and understanding very quickly what it is that organisations do need to be doing.
Look, just as a last point, you go and talk to a lot of people across the sector. When you're dealing with the technology leader and thinking about some of those points that we're talking about there, who tends to be the most important sponsor to them in a modern organisation? Is it the CIO? Is it the CEO? Is it the CFO? Or is it their peer group and getting buy-in?
Well, that's a really, really good question. And I think, in many organisations, what I'm looking to help them move from is a more traditional IT organisation to actually a true business partner. And I think I think you've pitched that really well, because it is about the relationships with your peers across the organisation. That's where real change is going to happen. But you need a really good sponsor. So it could be a really engaged, modern, forward-thinking CFO, but actually how many other business functions that are vital to the operation of it are sitting under a subordinacy on a board? I would prefer that it wasn't the CFO. I think that's born out of a mentality that says technology is about cost and risk.
Yeah.
But actually, there are some very engaged and forward-thinking CFOs. So I don't think that is a no-no. It would be about the individual. But clearly, you do need good sponsorship. So prior to getting into this work, I was involved in an executive role, and my sponsor was the chairman of that organisation. So I enjoyed senior recognition and sponsorship, which gave you a platform on which to operate. So you certainly need, I think, an effective platform, but that can be in many different forms in organisations.
Well, look, I think we could probably talk about this for 3 times as long as we have.
Probably,
Adrian, we are out of time.
Are we?
But thank you for spending a bit of time to talk through this subject with us. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of CIO Watercooler TV. If you've enjoyed this chat, there's plenty more content. Have a look at the links below.